school here. Before we begin, I want to give the stage to Lisbeth Tiekamp, who is at the Netherlands Consulate General, who has helped us quite a bit to put this exhibition and series together. It's been a real intersection with her interest and ours at the school. So she's got a few opening remarks. Lisbeth?
Thank you, Neil. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the opening of the exhibition 9+1, showing the work of 10 architectural offices from the Netherlands. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Architecture Institute in the Netherlands, the Stimuleringsfonds for Dutch Architecture, and SCI-Arc, in particular Neil Dinari and Margie Reeve, for making this exhibition possible. It is especially honorful because Dutch architecture has such a splendid international reputation. I experience this here regularly. Talking to local architects, they always come up with names not only of Rem Koolhaas, but also Ben van Berkel and Adriaan Geuze are well known and frequent visitors of Los Angeles. There is some mutual inspiration, probably related to the urbanistic developments and problems with both Los Angeles and the Netherlands face. There is another source of inspiration as well when one talks about Dutch architects here. This lies in the fact that Dutch architects are so young and do architecture jobs in their late 20s and early 30s, while in the US architects must have gray, if not white hair, before they can be active and have their own designs executed. In March 1997, the Netherlands Architecture Institute launched a series of 10 three-week exhibitions entitled 9+1 Young Dutch Architectural Offices, in which 10 young offices presented and discussed their architectural ideas and output. The aim of the exhibition series is to reveal recent developments in architecture as reflected in the work of a single generation of young Dutch architects. Young architects still searching for a personal stance and as yet unencumbered by the impediments of later practice are often able to find innovative ways of avoiding the limitations of regulations. This is certainly true of the generation represented here by a group of exceptionally versatile and open-minded young architects. The 10 participating offices were chosen by the Netherlands Architecture Institute in close collaboration with the architects concerned. A precondition for inclusion was that participating architects should have their own architectural office. For the rest, all belong to a generation that is building up an interesting personal oeuvre via competitions and with the help of startup grants. Last but not least, all the offices included here expressed a willingness to discuss their work. 9+1 are something of a paradox. While the 10 offices have similar attitudes towards architecture, this does not result in stylistically similar architecture. But this is the paradox of present-day reality, where new developments refuse to submit to traditional pigeonholing. What this generation does have in common is a critical attitude towards their profession, an international orientation, the desire to look beyond the boundaries of their discipline, and a sceptical attitude towards all-embracing theories. Perhaps what unites the participants in the 9+1 series most of all is an analytic approach. In the comparative simplicity of their basic approach, architectonic form is the result of a design strategy and not of a stylistic idiom. They see designing as an organizing task, as a method for arranging the spatial programmatic aspects of society. At the tail end of the 20th century, architectonic thought in the Netherlands is becoming more and more emancipated from the actual discipline of architecture, is starting to resemble strategy seeking and scenario development. If there is any common denominator to be found among these architectural offices, it is neither style nor ideology, but a refreshingly independent attitude towards the profession of the architects. I hope the present exhibition will be a source of inspiration for future contacts and cooperation between American and Dutch architects. And I wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Okay, just a few announcements about the events of the week before I introduce Rihanna. Wednesday, we will start the first of 3 lectures at noon on Wednesday. Mark Linneman, who is one of the partners of NL Architects, who is a part of 9+1, he's here in Los Angeles and will give a noontime presentation on his work on Wednesday. I urge you all to see that. At 6 o'clock, Levius Woods will be here, who's not Dutch, who will be here talking about what's going on in Vico, and he'll be giving a slide presentation and followed with questions as well. And the evening lecture will be at 7:30 on Wednesday by Jan van Toorn, who is just finishing 7 years as a professor at the Van Eyck Academy in Maastricht. And he's beginning his design practice once again, and he is an esteemed graphic design critic and professor and producer of amazing work. Also, we wouldn't have been able to put this on without the support from Van Tilburg, Banvard, and Soderberg architects in Santa Monica for their support. We're very, very pleased. Tonight's lecturer is Rianne Makkink, and she is one of 2 founding partners from Max.1 to be precise, from Rotterdam. And she founded the office in 1994 with Rients Dijkstra. At that time, there are more than 20 people working in the office now. I think Lisbeth's introduction was quite fitting and in a way clarified a lot of the issues that perhaps bring together Dutch architects in general. I met with Kristen Fireijs more than a year ago from the NAI, the Netherlands Architecture Institute, about, this is the catalog from 9+1, about starting a great thing here at SCI-Arc, which would be to make more of a connection with Dutch architects and Dutch education. This institute is located in Rotterdam, and it was the result of a competition won by Jo Konen to open a building in 93 or 94, I believe. It's a beautiful building. They have incredible exhibition programs, and it was an amazing sort of focal point of architectural life there. Among the various projects that Max 1 is working on is a project for 30,000 dwellings in Holland. They've produced projects as small as a single house. A 2-kilometer-long tunnel, however, goes to the opposite end, and 3,000 dwellings near Breda also somehow fall in between 1 and 30,000. The breadth and the scale of their work is tremendous. And one thing that I think Lisbeth mentioned, which is that the Dutch typically, I would say unlike perhaps many American architects of the same age, deal with issues of quantification as a kind of strategy, where 30,000 dwellings or 2-kilometer-long tunnels or issues of density, of ratios of open space versus solid, scales, numbers, data, research, conversion charts. These are all forms of cultural research which go into Dutch architecture, which find their way into these very, very large projects or even into the interior of a house. And I think that this issue of the strategy of quantification versus the strategy of composition, or the strategy and the logic of form as a sort of symbol of the contemporary condition, is something which does not course, shall I say, through a lot of the practices that might be comparable here in the United States. It's not simply an obvious observation to say that Americans, in their sort of quest for building, make up for their lack of building with the idle pastimes of finding form while the Dutch architects are busy putting up work. That would be too easy a binary to strike, I think. But as you'll look at all of the work in the exhibition, and as you'll see over the next week, I think there's something quite important for us to learn, and we'll begin that tonight. Let's welcome Rianne Makkink.
Okay. Thank you, Neil Benary and SCI-Arc, for inviting us. And us is 9+1. Whose one is the question for you, all of you? First slides, please. Okay, the other one also, please. I've got two. Technology is something new. Because they're doing it, I have to tell a secret, they're doing it by hand because it's not universal, these slides, so it will take some time. Okay, I'll first tell you a fairy tale about our office, and then I'll tell you something about the Holland, and then about the projects itself. I first do it on paper, and then with projects I'll do it by head, I hope. Okay, between 1992 and 1993, Rients Dijkstra and Mark Schendel designed this house in the north of the Netherlands, and was codenamed Max 1, and Max is for maximum 1. And this house was sharply criticized from the ugliest house of the Netherlands, and the other hand it was also called the most beautiful, so you can choose what you want. During the time of its completion, I was working at the Berlin office of De Weger, a large construction company, and was later bought by OMA. They bought OMA to save it from bankruptcy, and Rients was working in Rotterdam at OMA itself. Next slides, please. I will push, then they see. Then in 1984, we were asked to do the master plan for 30,000 houses extension of the city of Utrecht. It was one of the biggest commissions in the field of urbanism handed out this century. Rients and I employed 8 people during a long night of phone calls and started the office officially and gave it the same name as the ugly house, Max 1. And we reached our maximum from 1 to 30,000 houses very quickly. Mark Schendel has left for Chicago just days before. For him a pity, and he didn't return to us. Next slides. I will forget to push. Okay, you saw the other slides were the old office, but we expanded so quickly from 8 till 20 now. So we've got a new office where you see it's the new office completely empty, but it's full again. So it was 1 month ago at least. Our average age of people is 20.4 years, so that's quite young. And that's something special also about Holland, that people are very young. Most of it are designers. And we've chosen deliberately not to follow just one track through the field of design, but to move forward on parallel tracks with crossing points, such as infrastructure, interiors, urban design, buildings, furniture design, and software development. And today, it's really today, this morning, I was in Holland still, we had the birth of Max 36. It is a bridge, competition over the bridge over the River Maas in Rotterdam. Try it like this. Okay. Max 1 is interested in a theoretical discourse about architecture, but we don't like to become theorized by it. We use theory as a compass to help us navigate through the space of architecture. And instead of being alone and autonomous, we insist on traveling with a lot of others, like engineers, artists, historians, managers, photographers, nerds, etc. I want to start with a brief description about the territory, not because I missed your knowledge about the Netherlands, although I don't know if you know much about the Netherlands, but because I want to make explicit the conditions under which we're working. So I tell you 4 characteristics of the Netherlands, and I'll show you the first. Okay, this is Holland, a satellite photograph of the Holland. Perhaps you recognize it from the world satellite photograph. It's its flatness. It's extremely flat and also wet. And basically it's a thin layer of sand or mud 1 meter above ground level water. There are hardly any disturbances in sections. Our biggest hill is about 200 no, that's not good. I always say kilometers, but meters, but that's not even good. 321 meters, so that's nothing compared to America. An important effect is that the Dutch find it very hard to think in levels. Everything is next to each other, and concepts of things being on top of each other do not exist, at least not in the fields of planning and urbanism. And the second, it's very artificially. The part of the Netherlands that is known as Holland, so I will point out, because everybody also in America is talking about Holland, but actually these are the Netherlands, and only this part is Holland. But this is the part, the pink stuff, is where it's under sea level. We are minus 6 meters under sea level. This is the lowest point, somewhere here. So if we didn't have our dikes, then we had to live like Key Largo of the undersea lodge here in Florida. But we've got dikes, so that's good. And it's not only about this artificial about dikes, but everything is man-made, even the oldest part of Holland. We don't have any real nature anymore. Okay. The density, or rather the lack of space. The surface is about 13,270 square miles, accommodate 15.5 million people, 4.7 million cows, 90 million chickens, 50 million pigs. That's about 1,167 people per square mile and 8,285 farmed animals per square mile. There's in Europe not another country that's so dense as Holland. And I think hardly in the world there's a denser country. And you can see perhaps this is the Randstad, and all the cities, all the red, all the cities are together. I'll talk about it later in it. Okay, consensus. The fourth thing, my characteristics about Holland, is the consensus politics. Our democratic system is not very hierarchical, and every citizen can join the debate on local as well regional as national issues. It is possible for a single person to block or slow down any process of architecture, urbanism or planning in a system called inspraak. This word has no translation, but it sounds like raise voice or speak up. When you're involved in architecture in Holland, you're always involved in politics. Okay. I'll give you a small summary about Holland. Because everything is very artificial and because we have so little space, the obvious solution would be to create a number of extra levels to make caves or mountains every time the demand for space exceeds the available territory. The reality is that it takes an enormous effort to convince the powers that be, such as strategy, because these are stuck with their notion of flatness and afraid that the voters will turn against them and then will give up the traditional Dutch landscape. You see here the section over Holland. This morning I left this pit, and it's called Schiphol. It's really under sea level. This is the sea. This is Amsterdam, completely on piles. And here is the Zuiderzee, so it's the section through Holland like here. And they're really this deep. We have to make our underground piles. The Dutch Randstad is an unlikely metropolitan area. 7 million people occupy a part of the Netherlands that would flood if you would take down the intricate system of dikes and pumps and keep the water out. The Randstad is not a single city, but a large group of larger cities like Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Den Haag, and Utrecht. You see it here. And this in between, I think everybody heard about it, even here in America, is this is the Randstad, and this is the Green Heart. It's a part of the country that is not occupied. It's still agricultural land, but you see everywhere, you see it like this, with bushes, with high-rise sometimes, and electricity poles everywhere. So this agricultural land is not really completely without surroundings or cities. Yeah, very good. This still largely agricultural flatland is regarded as a reservoir of nature and a very important recreational area for its inhabitants of the ring, the Randstad. It's never really dense and never really empty. That's very important to Holland. The largest concentration is the city of Amsterdam with 1.1 million people and hardly in a high rise. Yeah, okay. After a period of modest production during the 80s with the focus on urban renewal of inner city neighborhoods, the Netherlands has set itself the task of building 1 million houses between 1995 and 2015. 2/3 of these houses will be added to the ring city. This operation is known as Vinex. The largest Vinex site in Holland is related to Utrecht, Holland's 4th city and hub of its railway network. To the east of the existing city, as a new town has to be planned for approximately 100,000 inhabitants. And Riens was called by Riek Bakker. Perhaps she was known in Holland because she's a very political figure, known because she helped also getting this bridge to cross the River Maas. This is the bridge of Ben van Berkel. And Riens was asked her if we could do something. He showed her the map, and if you could do something about the highway, and if you could move the highway, and he said yes. She said yes. I'm sorry. And then he said, "Okay, we take the job." So it was like a big boy fairy tale mostly. Okay, I'll tell you very quickly about Utrecht. So it's more to the east of it's the east side of the Randstad. This is Utrecht. You see here the A2 it connects Amsterdam with Belgium. So it's an important highway. This is the A12. That's the east to the west. And this is the crossing of Holland actually, because it connects the harbor of Rotterdam. That's still the main port of. Perhaps of the world, I think. It's the main harbor of the world, to Germany. But it was the crossing of the Netherlands, north, south, east, west. This is the part that has to be these 30,000 houses in. This is Rotterdam, Utrecht, with its railway, with a canal. Here, you see here the canal. It's very beautiful. Again, the map. Here, the canal, the highway. These two are the barriers for the new Leidse Rijn section. And you see here also You can't see it very good at this map, but believe me, here's a railway. This part of Utrecht is quite rich and social correct. This is the bad neighborhood of Utrecht. Even we have bad neighborhoods. And if you have to place here 30,000 houses, then this part would be exactly in the middle of these two, of the old city, of the new city. So we had to do something about connections and had to make it a complete city. Again, it's a bird tree. Here's the canal and the highway. There were two little villages also involved, De Meeren and Vleuten here in the back. And they were completely covered by the 30,000 houses, so they were not very happy with it, actually very afraid what was going to happen. Okay, this is a very important map. We ask everybody, because we have this inspraak in Holland, not after we did a project, but on forehand, to give everything they thought would be important to put it on the map. Everybody could place something on the map, or his house, or so in the end we had this map with the two little cities over here. This is an agricultural lane with houses and trees. It's quite important. We've got these pink things are Roman archaeological sites. They're not going to do anything with it. It's completely covered with mud for years, but they want to keep it free, so if in the future they can dig it up. And we had trees. So this was the most important map to start with. And we thought it would be very important because 70% of the housing is going to be will be developed by developers, and 30% will be developed by social housing. Social housing in Holland, there are architects involved. By developers, it's always a problem. Most of the time, there will be no architect involved. And you've got this wide, it's our house actually, but this is what is common now as the most, the happy family house of Holland. Everybody wants to have this part of, wants to live like this. So we wanted to give also the developers not a wasteland or a tabula rasa, so if build this, but give them some ingredients, or I have got it very good on paper, but I would more to give them some that they could not had to deal with all these things in between. Because we're very afraid of this developer side like this. Okay, one thing you have to know about Dutch planning laws is that they're very strict. If you have a proper highway, you cannot build any housing or residential buildings within 600 meters of the highway because of sound regulations. So every highway creates a gutter of 0.8 miles wide that you can only use for commercial program or public space. Okay, and now if you would apply this law to our site with the amount of houses we had to deal with, we would have ended up with this scheme, avoiding only the most important elements on the obstacle map. We had to build houses up to 250 meters from the highway. You see it like here. It's very close, so we didn't even get our 600 meters. To be able to legally build this close, 10-meter high sound screens had to be erected along the highways. Then, ironically, the large park that could be planned on the basis of so many new inhabitants had to be put next to the highway. a 250-meter wide strip behind a 10-meter high wall. You can imagine that's a terror. It was a terror in our eyes. So the situation was that we could forget about the quality of the two small villages and forget about the connection between the new city and the old city of Utrecht. With all these barriers to cross, useless green areas, sound screen, highway, channel, the new city would have no meaning to be or any contribution to the existing city and vice versa. The solution to the dilemma, of course, would be to get rid of the noise generated by the traffic. Okay, so Utrecht had already been, this thing moves, has been thinking about a tunnel, but a tunnel is in Holland difficult because you have to keep it underwater, so you make 3-meter thick floor to get it in piles, and a good pile foundation to keep it underwater, and it costed about $500 million to get it done. So the government was not happy with it, and they didn't agree on it. So we were not happy because it looked hopeless. But then we've been thinking about something else, and it was like we called it the hollow dike. It's half in the ground, so we had not to use these piles, but let it float on itself, more like a boat than the submarine of the road of the channel before the Utrecht wanted to build. You see this half dike, then you have to put ground on it, and you could use it for all these other things, like tennis courts. You could use it for having a new bus or tram lane or something else. Sheep could be on it. You could have a swimming pool with looking into this half of this tunnel. And we have to make pits in it because of for the explosion danger. So you can imagine if you would go over the half of this tunnel and then look at the pit, seeing all these cars coming, 200,000 cars a day, 200,000 cars a day go from the north to the south. And the Dutch government was pleased by it, and it's about a 2 kilometers long tunnel, and it's going to happen now. They're thinking about it. First, we wanted to have it on the side, build it on the side of the road, because then you could have this building without any problems with the other road. But now they don't want to do it. So there's going to be another solution. Okay. I will not tell anything about the plan, but what you see is, what's very important is the highway is this piece. Here it's under, this is a tunnel. Then you suddenly didn't have the barrier anymore of the noise, so we could bring the houses very close to the Utrecht part, so the connections would be better, everything would be better, and it would be a nice environment. The park was not anymore here, but now suddenly here in the middle, we could keep all these nice houses with trees, the agricultural lanes. The old villages were happy, and this is you can see here the sketch of the tunnel, of the hollow dike. Okay, this is our model, our first model. And you can see here a detail of crossing this is the highway, crossing the train track with all commercial buildings on it, because we also had to do these commercial buildings, of course, and they're still very close to the highway. But it's a long story to tell, and I want to show you more. I want to show you more projects. Okay, this is a competition we won. It's 14 houses, 14 elderly homes in the south of Holland, Eindhoven. Elderly homes in Holland means when you're 50, you're already old. So it's quite shocking to us. You see here, it's this part, green. This is the usual housing with a street, and then the house, and then the garden in the back. Very common Dutch layout. This was the part. What we wanted to do is to give it more and I can't see it anymore. Oh yeah. This is the competition model. It's different now. We placed the rows, the 14 houses, the other way around, not like the street, because then we had again the street and the houses and the backyards, or the gardens and then the backyards. We placed them the other way around, and also we thought about having in the future this small building, leaving this small building so we could make an extension. And we placed, we get the pedestrians inside of the houses, like more an RV park that you're always on a holiday, within all the entrances on the inside. So this is completely public. We put the other way around. The public, the outside is the inside now. Sorry? Change the gallery. Okay. That's great. You can see here the model or the plan, and it's actually, we've got a building site that's very accelerating to us, but it's very strange to have this. Building is to us a kind of a retarded dinosaur that's left behind. You never know. It takes so many years to get something built. Even in Holland, it costs you from first sketch to get it finished over 3 years. And the way people build is still very old-fashioned almost. But we're still very happy to see this creature come alive. This is the computer rendering. We have this cantilever where you can park. You can park then without getting wet. That's quite important in Holland. And this is the entrance for the upper level. This is a homemade, the facade is made of this polyurethane silver coating. This is a model, one that we didn't agree upon. But that's also very important to our office, that we try to invent new materials with a lot of companies. And companies are very eager to help young architects to do so. And we also, our client agreed also on this material. So that's why we're quite happy with it. This is not a building project. I show you 2 building projects, and they're going to be finished all within 2 weeks. So that's an exciting time to us. And these are 28 bridges in Leidse Rijn. The first part is going to be built, 850 houses. So the first part you've seen now in Utrecht in the scheme I showed you by Kees Christiaanse. He made the urban design layout, because we did it on a very big scale and he does it now on a smaller scale. And these bridges we didn't make an issue out of over the bridging. Because this water is not going to be crossed by boats. It's only, it's not land, but it's water. So what first was very important to make not an issue about bridging, but to give it more the movement of the bridge, to give it so, how do you enter with a car, come into this place and make this movement into architecture. And even these are pit holes, or holes you don't need because of the movement. This is something, these two don't match, but it's the same. This is another bridge that's going to be built. And these pit holes, you don't need them, so we left them as pit holes. First we wanted to get rid of this railing, but it was not possible. And now we have these railings, but it's from RVS, nice curved railings. And you can't get underneath the bridge because it's like a building. It's built on piles because most of the money is going into this bridging thing, and we didn't want to spend any money more than was necessary for this bridging. Okay. Yes, another one. No. Can you put the left one back? Okay. I'm going to read something again. An alarming aspect of Dutch urbanism is its tendency to be complete every time it happens, regardless of its size and location. One expects each and every urban plan to be recognizable as a separate entity. So that can be labeled with the magic word identity. The result is that every new bit of city is rounded off, introvert, smooth-surfaced, and unpenetratable. We wonder why one of us ever asked for an incomplete scheme in urbanism, a plan that can only be understood if you understand its surroundings. Shouldn't the good piece of urbanism by definition be a failure if you cut off it from its neighbors? That's a question. Okay. Enschede is in the east of the country. That's another Vinex site. So it has to do, they have to build it before 2015. It's about 1,000 houses in this area. And it's quite important and also different to the other Vinex sites because this is the only one that's in the inner city. Here's the old town, Enschede, and here it is. You can see it in here. This is the site when it was still happy and working. You can see here old factories. And this is Grol's factory. You all have been drinking today, I saw. It's over here. So we had to deal with this Vinex program of a very low density in an inner city plan. So it's quite hard to do because the only thing you mostly get are houses on a small plot, and we didn't want to do it in this inner city side. It had a very flourishing textile industry, but it's diminished in the 80s, and then it was standing for years. It was derelict for years. I don't know. A lot of rows and squatters were in these beautiful factories, but most of it has been broken down because they couldn't handle the situation anymore. Okay, we were trying to get this theory of incompleteness on this plan, and we were looking at roads that would never been connected to make it now connected with the neighborhood. Getting here are houses to get them connected, and they've never been connected. To get a football field in the old, get it as a courtyard, old houses or old factories as a parking lot, and we try to get. I think the surroundings in this plan were very important, even more important than the plan. This is a very nice silo, and it's going to turn into a restaurant. Okay. We had the same housing program as Utrecht, so that's the density of 35 houses on hectare. So it would have been a very awkward suburb. And what we did, we make it kind of snakes that we covered around the surroundings. We put all the houses together and keep them going over the field without like a movement over the whole side. And you could do a lot of these things with like these examples. Because that's very important that you put all the individual houses together and then make them as a row. And we also did what we also try to do, and they're very into it now, to make not only, this is the normal block, to give them more height, more cube meters, and more square meters, and then combine them for different topologies. So you would have, like this is a block that you could go in the width and in the height. It's quite unusual because most, especially in the height, because it costs a lot of money, of the facades cost a lot of money, so the builders were not very happy. But we said, okay, make it less detailed, make it more studios, make it, and then it will happen. Okay. Last year we were asked to join another rather large-scale project for the city of Utrecht. This concerned the inner city and especially the main train station and all its surrounding buildings. Another office started the scheme, but apparently messed up the central and most complicated site, where a bus stop and a taxi bus, a large mall and a railway station all claimed use of the same area. And I mean this area. Here you see the yellow things, they are our buses. This is the Congress Center, this is Hoog Catharijne. For the Dutch people, they will know about it. It was very popular in the 70s. Okay, it's by time we first sketch a proposal for the enormous roof that covers the whole area. Meanwhile, back at the office, we prepared an alternative for the 5 slabs that were proposed by our predecessor. So here you see this enormous roof. They wanted to cover this whole site with this giant roof and then make all these slabs over here on this, in this area. So this is the part over here with more commercial buildings and all of this stuff. What annoyed us in the slab scheme is that slab is a high-rise type of building that should benefit from an attractive surroundings. High-rise needs view. In this situation, the view is the top of the big roof, the ugly roofs of the existing buildings, the other slabs and the river of railway tracks. not quite enough to want to look out onto. So we decided to keep only the slabs that sit on the edge of the roof and to tip over the remaining slabs to form on very flat volume of 3 stories high. The resulting building is 250 meters long and 80 meters wide. To provide light and view, a multitude of holes is carved out of the main volume. The low building, or cake as we call it, has office program and public facilities. The 2 remaining slabs contain 200 apartments. This is a side section. This is the normal slab. You need the view. This is what we proposed to have all these holes in it. Because you see here all these areas where the train has to stop or comes in, where taxis are, where buses are, and this would be then the high rise. We wanted to have more connection because this was an island and you have this dead connection here. We really wanted to have more connections downwards, like this, and also better views inside. Okay, this is then the explanation to get all these diagrams, like sunlight into this triangle Venus, and that you needed the address, and okay, and here you can come from the main port, just from the station, and go to your office immediately, like this. Here you can see the diagrams. Here's the cake I mentioned. The slabs are on the side, the 2 slabs with the housing in it. They're not very visible here. This is the main root, like a spine. And these are the holes of the Venus, the different holes in the whole building. And in between there's office space, bars, everything you can imagine. Okay, this diagram summarizes the strategy for carving. Its cuts are vary in size and position from floor to floor. Besides, almost all the cuts have tapering sides for the more perspective variation. The floor plan is the lower of the 3 levels and shows the central corridor of spine. I already told you. With that, has branches to all the office units above. Okay, here you see the foam, the foam model of it, and this is the model that's actually here. We made it especially for this exhibition that was going to travel, so it was a good opportunity to make this model and to show it to you. You see here the cars, the under level. This is the 0 level. Here are where the. Oh, am I right? Yeah. And then you go up, and here the offices on top of it, with the different schemes of it. Okay, I've got no idea how long I talked. I think long enough. I've got a few more slides of the building, and I think I will leave it this way. I talk quicker than I thought, so also. And I think actually I was very surprised when I came in here that this is the nicest lecture room I've ever seen here, because I think it had to go up the whole time because there's a parking lot in the back, so you could have a drive-in lecture or something. It's really amazing here. This 3rd dimension we are lack of in Holland, and perhaps this is not the 3rd dimension here, but it's very easy, and I like it very much to have it here. Okay, I'll show you a few slides, and then oh, that's also interesting. This is a new perspective. They're all. This one is also. Oh, not. No, this is good. Okay, it's the end of the show, I think, because they're all upside down. Okay. Thank you for listening.